Puffy wants Cassie back. Probably treated her at some particular point like a possession, like a possession. As the mother of a now 16-year-old.
Who I met backstage, who was...
You represent a lot.
We all make choices in life. We all go through our challenges.
Wendy Williams looked a journalist dead in the eye and said, "I know where all the bodies are buried." She wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't doing a bit. She meant every word, and the people in that room knew it. For over 2 decades, Wendy Williams ran the most feared gossip operation in entertainment. Her radio show, her TV show, her book, her interviews, all of it pointed toward one central truth that most people in Hollywood spent millions trying to suppress. This industry runs on secrets, and Wendy knew them all. What's wild is that she told us, over and over again, not in code, not in whispers, out loud, on camera, with a smile on her face. She named names, she described scenes, she connected dots that powerful people desperately wanted, kept separate. And for years, the general public chalked it up to gossip, entertainment, noise. But go back now and listen to what she actually said. Watch the old clips with fresh eyes.
Puffy wants Cassie back. Oh, it's been all over social media. Puffy posted a picture of Michael Jackson's song, Lady in My Life, and wrote, "If anyone sees Cassie this weekend, please tell her to listen to this song 100 times. I suggest don't use social media, though, to reach out. I think this is a grand overture from Puffy. I don't believe he really wants her back. I believe he probably treated her at some particular point like a possession, like a possession.
You'll notice something that stops you cold. Almost everything she warned people about eventually came true.
And if you really care, then you'd reach out privately, not publicly.
The relationships she said were fake turned out to be fake. The people she said were dangerous turned out to be dangerous. The careers she said were built on illusions collapsed exactly the way she described. She wasn't just gossiping. She was giving a real-time map of how power moves in this industry. And then something strange happened. The moment she started losing her own grip on things publicly, the moment she became vulnerable, the very industry she had covered so aggressively for so long turned its back on her completely. No calls, no support, no protection. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. This is the story of what Wendy Williams actually tried to tell us, why so many people weren't ready to hear it, and what it reveals about the machine she spent her whole career exposing. Before she was the woman in the chair with the purple wig and the Hot Topics mug, Wendy Williams was a radio DJ in Newark, New Jersey, fighting for airtime in a city that didn't exactly hand opportunities to loud, opinionated black women. She clawed her way in. She stayed late. She studied the game from the ground up, and what she learned during those early years shaped everything that came after. Radio taught her something that television never could. When people can't see your face, they pay closer attention to your words. And Wendy used that to build a reputation as someone who simply could not be bought, could not be silenced, and absolutely could not be intimidated. Record labels called her station threatening to pull ad money if she kept talking about certain artists.
The former talk show host was also the subject of a Lifetime documentary that was criticized for showing Wendy at her lowest, looking out of it and perhaps not fully aware of what was going on.
She kept talking. Managers sent letters. She read them on air. Publicists begged her to stop. She went harder. If this wasn't recklessness, this was strategy. Wendy understood early that the moment you flinch, you lose all credibility. The audience smells fear. And once they stop trusting you, you're just another voice doing what the industry tells you to do. She got fired. More than once. She got blacklisted from certain events. Artists refused to work with stations that aired her show. The pressure campaigns against her were relentless, and they were coordinated. Multiple labels, multiple management teams, all pushing in the same direction, all trying to make her disappear from the dial. It didn't work. What they didn't understand is that every attempt to silence her just made her audience bigger. Every threat made her more credible to regular people who already suspected the industry was hiding something. She became the person you turned to when you wanted to know what was actually going on behind the press releases and the red carpet smiles. By the time she landed her television show in 2008, she wasn't just a gossip host. She was an institution, and institutions are very hard to ignore. The television show changed everything about her reach, but it didn't change anything about her approach. Same Wendy, bigger platform. And a bigger platform meant she could say things in front of millions of people that used to only reach a few 100,000 late-night radio listeners. The industry noticed, and this time, they couldn't just threaten one station manager to make her go away. She started connecting dots on air that made entertainment lawyers genuinely nervous. Not because she was lying, because she wasn't. One of the clearest examples of Wendy being years ahead of the conversation was what she said about Diddy, long before any court documents. any federal investigations, any headlines that would eventually shock the country. Wendy was on air telling her audience that Sean Combs was not someone to be taken lightly behind closed doors. She described the culture around him as one built on control, loyalty tests, and an environment where people didn't feel free to just walk away. She said it casually, the way you say something you assume everyone already knows. Nobody ran with it at the time. The clips existed. The quotes were out there.
As the mother of a now 16-year-old.
Who I met backstage,
He did?
he's a great young man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You represent a lot, too.
But the media ecosystem wasn't ready to touch someone of Diddy's stature based on a talk show host's commentary, no matter how specific that commentary was. Wendy got labeled as messy, as someone stirring the pot for ratings. The substance of what she actually said got buried under the noise of her personality. That's a trick the industry perfected. If you can make the messenger look chaotic enough, you never have to address the message. And Diddy wasn't the only name she circled. Wendy had a habit of returning to certain figures in entertainment again and again, each time adding a little more detail, a little more texture, like she was slowly painting a picture she wanted people to eventually be able to see clearly. She was patient about it, deliberately, strategically patient. R. Kelly was another name she returned to constantly, and this is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Wendy was talking about R. Kelly's behavior around young women years before the documentaries, years before the convictions, years before mainstream media decided the story was finally worth telling. She didn't hedge. She didn't say allegedly 17 times and then walk it back in the next breath. She was direct, specific, and consistent. She told her audience what was happening. She described the dynamics. She named the environment he operated in and the way people around him stayed quiet. And the response from the broader media landscape was almost identical to what happened with her Diddy commentary. Dismissal, eye rolls, the suggestion that Wendy was just being Wendy, stirring up controversy because that's what she did for a living. But here's what that response actually reveals. It wasn't that people thought she was wrong. It was that going after R. Kelly at that point in time carried real professional consequences. He was a commercially powerful figure with deep ties across the industry. Outlets that challenged him risked losing access, losing advertising relationships, losing invitations to the kind of events that kept entertainment media alive. Wendy didn't have those concerns in the same way. She had already burned most of those bridges on purpose. That's what made her dangerous to certain people and invaluable to her audience at the same time. She operated outside the access economy that kept most entertainment journalists in line. She didn't need a sit-down interview with your artist to fill her show. She didn't need your label's cooperation to generate content. That independence gave her a kind of freedom that almost nobody else in her position had. And she used it to say things that the rest of the industry was quietly thinking but publicly refusing to touch. The question people never really asked back then was simple. If she was just making things up, why did so much of it keep turning out to be true? The accuracy of her track record forces you to look at everything else she said with completely fresh eyes. Because it wasn't just the big criminal cases she was ahead of. It was the smaller stories too. The feuds, the alliances, the relationships that looked one way in the press and completely another way behind closed doors. Wendy had a radar for the gap between public image and private reality, and that radar was almost never wrong. Go back and watch her breakdowns of certain celebrity feuds that the media treated as petty drama at the time. The beef between specific artists that everyone assumed was about ego or competition. Wendy kept insisting those conflicts ran deeper than music, that there were business disputes, broken agreements, and in some cases, genuine fear underneath the diss tracks and the social media posts. Years later, when contracts got leaked and lawsuits got filed, the actual reasons behind those feuds started surfacing, and they lined up almost exactly with what she had described. She talked about Jay-Z and the business structures around Roc Nation in ways that raised eyebrows at the time. Not accusations, but observations about how power consolidates in this industry and what artists sometimes give up in exchange for access to that power. She talked about the machinery behind certain careers and how some of the biggest names in hip-hop were operating inside systems that didn't actually serve their interests long-term. And people heard those segments and thought she was being cynical or jealous or just filling airtime with speculation. Then the stories started coming out. The lawsuits, the contract disputes, the artists speaking publicly about feeling trapped or misled or exploited by the very deals that were supposed to make them stars. And suddenly, Wendy's commentary didn't sound like cynicism anymore. It sounded like reporting. She was watching this industry the way a prosecutor watches a suspect. Patient, thorough, building a case piece by piece, waiting for the moment when everyone else would finally catch up to what she already knew. And that's exactly what's happening right now. People are catching up, not gradually, not quietly, all at once, in real time, across every platform simultaneously. Old Wendy clips are flooding social media right now because people are watching them with completely different context than when they first aired. A clip that seemed like gossip in 2012 hits completely differently in 2024 when the person she was describing is now facing federal charges or public scandal. Viewers are doing the work themselves, pulling archives, time-stamping quotes, and laying them side by side with current headlines. The comment sections on these videos are full of the same 3 words over and over. She knew everything. And the timing of this viral moment is not random. It's connected directly to the wave of industry scandals that started breaking publicly over the last couple of years. When the Diddy allegations became front-page news, people immediately started searching for who had been talking about this before it was safe to talk about it. The algorithm led them straight to Wendy. And what they found when they got there genuinely surprised them. It wasn't vague, it wasn't coded. She had been saying specific things, describing specific dynamics, pointing at specific people for years. The receipts were just sitting there on YouTube, fully intact, waiting for someone to finally take them seriously. What's fascinating about this viral moment is what it says about the way information moves through culture. The truth doesn't always land when it's first spoken. Sometimes it needs a second event, a confirmation, a scandal that finally makes the original warning make sense to people who weren't ready to believe it the first time. Wendy was the warning. The federal indictments, the lawsuits, the public confessions, those were the confirmation. She planted seeds for years, and right now, in real time, every single one of them is blooming at the same time, and the internet is watching with its jaw on the floor. But here's the part of this story that most people gloss over when they're sharing those viral clips. The same industry that Wendy spent decades exposing didn't just ignore her warnings, it eventually came for her directly. And when it did, it was methodical. The cracks started showing publicly around 2018 when she revealed on air that she had been living in a sober house. The audience was stunned. Wendy had always projected an image of total control, sharp wit, unshakable confidence. The admission was raw and it was brave, but it also handed her critics something they had been looking for, a vulnerability they could use. From that point forward, the narrative around Wendy started shifting in ways that felt coordinated. She wasn't a truth teller anymore. She was unstable. She wasn't an industry insider with legitimate knowledge. She was a sick woman whose commentary couldn't be trusted. The reframing was subtle at first, and then it wasn't subtle at all. Her health struggles became the dominant story. Her personal life, her marriage falling apart, her finances, all of it got pulled into the public conversation in ways that conveniently buried any discussion of what she had actually spent 20 years saying about other people. The focus moved from the content of her words to the condition of her life, and that switch was incredibly effective. Because once you're the story, you can no longer tell the story. That's a rule Hollywood understands better than almost anyone. People who had sat quietly while she exposed them for years suddenly felt comfortable speaking publicly about her struggles. Industry figures who had never once defended her when she was being pressured and threatened were now openly expressing concern for her well-being. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, but it was also strategic. Sympathy framing is just another way to discredit someone without appearing to attack them directly. Wendy had used that exact playbook to analyze other people's situations for years. Now it was being used on her. The guardianship situation that followed was the moment a lot of people stopped being able to explain away what was happening to her as just circumstance. In 2022, Wells Fargo froze her bank account, citing concerns about financial exploitation. Then a financial guardian was appointed to oversee her affairs. Wendy, a woman who had built a media empire from scratch, who had negotiated her own deals and run her own business for decades, suddenly had other people controlling her money and her decisions. Her team at the time framed it as protection. People close to her pushed back hard on that framing and said it felt like anything but. The question people kept asking quietly in comment sections and group chats was whether any of this was truly organic, or whether the industry had finally found a way to do what threats and blacklists and pressure campaigns had failed to do for 20 years. Wendy had survived label boycotts, publicist wars, and celebrity feuds that would have ended most careers. but she couldn't survive the combination of genuine health struggles and a system that seemed to move against her the moment she became vulnerable. Whether it was coordinated or simply opportunistic, the result was the same. The loudest voice in the room went silent, and the silence was deafening in ways that exposed exactly who her real allies were, which turned out to be almost nobody inside the industry she had covered. The artists she had championed over the years, the ones she had given platforms to when nobody else was paying attention, stayed quiet. The colleagues who had benefited from the conversation she kept alive for decades said nothing publicly. Her audience showed up. Regular people, fans who had watched her every morning for years. They were loud and they were angry on her behalf. But fan support doesn't stop a guardianship. It doesn't unfreeze a bank account. It doesn't put you back in your chair on a television set. The machine had finally found its lever, and it pulled it. What makes this whole story land so differently now is that Wendy herself predicted this outcome. Not in a vague, this industry will get you kind of way. Specifically, she talked on multiple occasions about what happens to people who know too much and lose their protection. She described the mechanics of it plainly. When you're powerful, your secrets are an asset. When you become vulnerable, those same secrets become a liability that other people want to manage for you. She watched it happen to others and she narrated it in real time for her audience. The sudden reputational shifts, the health crises that conveniently sidelined people right before they were about to say or do something the industry found threatening. The way certain figures disappeared from public life not through any single dramatic event, but through a slow accumulation of setbacks that each looked unrelated on the surface. She described that pattern so many times that longtime viewers basically have it memorized. And now those same viewers are sitting at home watching the pattern play out on Wendy herself in real time, with every detail lining up almost exactly the way she said it would. That's not irony. That's a warning she embedded in her own story. Because the most uncomfortable truth this whole situation forces people to confront is that the industry didn't come for Wendy because she was wrong. If she had been consistently wrong, she would have been easy to dismiss and eventually irrelevant. Nobody spends that kind of energy discrediting someone who isn't landing hits. The pressure she faced throughout her career, the blacklists, the threats, the coordinated reputation campaigns, all of it only makes sense if the things she was saying were accurate enough to be genuinely threatening to powerful people. You don't try to silence noise, you try to silence signal. And for more than 2 decades, Wendy Williams was the clearest signal in the room. The industry knew it, the audience knew it, and deep down, even the people who spent years trying to discredit her knew it too. Wendy Williams spent over 20 years doing something that almost nobody else in entertainment was willing to do. She told the truth out loud, on camera, with her name attached to it, and she kept doing it even when the consequences were real and the pressure was relentless. That takes a kind of courage that's easy to underestimate when you're watching it through the lens of a talk show format. The clips are still out there, the receipts are fully intact, and every week, more people are finding them for the first time and having that same jaw-dropping moment of recognition. She said this years ago, and nobody listened. Maybe the lesson here isn't just about Wendy. Maybe it's about who we choose to take seriously and why and what it costs us when we get that wrong. If this story made you think, drop a comment below. Tell us which part hit different for you, because this conversation is just getting started. Give this video a like if you think Wendy deserved better than what this industry gave her, and subscribe to Backstage Culture for the stories behind hip-hop headlines that most people are still too afraid to tell. See you in the next one.